Let's see if they like this entrance. All right, are we ready? All right, I want to thank everybody for being here. Turn down the light a little so I'm not as blind. All right, so tonight's talk, we are doing stress, sugar, and diabetes. If you have questions, ask. I'm going to go over the 4 most common causes of diabetes and the different ones we see. I am not going to talk about gestational because that only happens with pregnant mommies, so we're not going to talk about that one tonight. But we're going to go over the ones. There's one that I'm going to bring up that most people aren't even aware of, and the other ones you may be aware of. So tonight's talk, the goal is to help you understand indications that you may be going down this route, and there are things that we can actually do to help you stabilize these different aspects. We're going to go through some stories about different forms, what they usually look like, and then I'll go into some physiology, and if we have enough time, I'll go a little deeper. So what we're going to look at is what is supposed to happen normal, and then where can problems actually happen. So I'm going to make this really simple. I'm not going to go into, and I want you to understand this, the blood sugar can be affected by the adrenal glands, by the microbiome, by the brain. I'm not going to go into any of them. I'm just going to go into the basic physiology. If you want to go more in depth into that, we'd have to figure out exactly what's going on with you personally. But understand that, say you have a head injury, that can literally affect and cause you to get diabetes. Most people aren't aware of that. The head injury itself can affect how your brain communicates to your pancreas and so forth. So those are the big areas that we're going to miss, but I'm going to cover the general concepts for everybody to understand, and I can give you some certain products to use when we look at it. I will let you know that in our office, the most common thing we actually see is hypoglycemia. So we don't actually see hyper or diabetes. We commonly see hypo. Why is this important? Because hypo is missed by conventional medical doctors. If your blood sugar is low, unless it's below 55, they say it's okay. That's not true. I need you to understand there's a range that you need to be in, and that range determines how healthy you are. If you're too high, it causes the same problems as if you're too low. It's just too high, you speed up aging a little quicker. Too low will get similar issues. So let's say too high gives you 100% problems, too low will give you 70% problems. Because you're not going to have the excess sugar to clog up things that you do when you're too high, but when you're too low, you don't have enough energy to function. Yes, sir. HYPO. So hypoglycemia or hypo blood sugar. This means low blood sugar. And then hyper is high, HYPER. And then GLY, cemia is basically blood sugar. So hypo means low blood sugar, hyper means high blood sugar. So what we're going to look at is what should happen. 185. Okay, here's our range. Our blood sugar range for healthy individuals, not diabetic, healthy individual. I'm going to say this again, healthy individual. Why am I saying this? Because when I ask somebody to get a glucose monitor, the glucose monitor is made for a diabetic. We don't look at it that way. I'm using it as a tool to figure out where you are. So I'm not looking to see if you're dying because your blood sugar is out of range. I'm looking to make sure that the first step going towards diabetes isn't happening.
Preventative.
Yes, preventative care, exactly. So 100 is the top end, 85 is the low end. This is your blood sugar ranges. So when we eat, so we'll put sugar here. When we eat, what will happen is we'll eat, blood sugar will spike, and then it should come right back down, and then it should stabilize. So it's okay if it goes above. but we want it to come back down in a relatively fast time. What will happen with that is insulin will come in, it'll spike, and it'll come back down, and then everything's okay. So orange is insulin, and blue is blood sugar. We doing good so far, team?
Yeah.
This is healthy.
When you say quickly, how quickly?
Like half an hour. So when can we see problems? This is healthy. Well, here's a problem. We eat, green is going to be blood sugar. We eat, well, that ain't going to work. Black's going to be blood sugar. We eat, and we just sit here like this. And then we come down and hang out like that. So you see how instead of coming up and coming right back down, and insulin will do the same thing, but it will stay high. And what will happen is because insulin's job is to jam sugar into the cell, it says, well, that's not working. So instead of doing the normal thing, it comes up and it stays up and then comes down. You go, well, that can't be that bad, is it? Oh, but insulin's a naughty thing to have going around for too much. So insulin will actually turn on cytokine storms. If you don't know what that means, it turns on chronic inflammation. The longer you have insulin spikes, the more inflammation you have. We do not want more insulin. Insulin will cause major issues. It turns on NF-kappa beta, which is directly correlated. It's a genetic response that turns on inflammation. So the cytokine storm, like, have you ever rolled an ankle and then how your ankle swells? That's a cytokine storm. Same thing happens throughout your whole body when insulin stays high. We don't want that. That's bad. That increases cancer risk, aging, all the bad stuff. So this is going to be your common diabetic response. Type 2 specifically. Go ahead, sir. Yes. That's going to be your type 2. That's going to be your insulin resistance. So that's basically saying the receptor sites in the cell are not getting it, and they're not opening the gates to get the sugar in.
So is the high sugar itself also damaging?
So the question is the high sugar itself damaging? Yes. So it will cause what's called glycolated end products. What does that mean in simple language? You start glazing your body with sugar. So you get that donut and you glaze it and it comes out. You get that red blood cell and you glaze it and it comes out. Well, it comes out normal and it's a it's an A1C of 5.7. You keep glazing it over and over again, and the amount of sugar on it tells you how much glaze it is, and that's how your A1C goes up. They will get sticky, but the problem is more than that. The problem is the sugar will start attaching to other tissue. And then you get protein sugar molecules in your body will start attacking it. And that's how you get that chronic inflammatory response. So if we remember during COVID, the people that got really sick were the ones who had diabetes or obesity, right? Well, the diabetes is because they already had chronic inflammation. And then the virus caused more inflammation, and that's what killed them. That's that cytokine storm that they talk about, or that chronic inflammatory response. So the glycolated end products or overabundance of sugar can actually cause small cells that are very fragile to die. What's the most fragile cells in your body are the nerves. So that's why you lose feeling in your feet. They actually die. Go ahead.
The obese people, what was the problem with that?
So the question from the crowd is, why did the obese people have issues? Remember that NF-kappa beta I was talking about? Adipose tissue or fat will actually increase that. So the more fat you have, the more inflammation you have. That's why it will increase fatty acids, and I'll show you how that works when we get to type 2. So that is your common type 2 diabetes. Type 1 but diabetes, what happens is this. This is uncontrolled type 1. You eat your food, sugar comes in, you do not have insulin, and it just stays high until you take insulin. So your blood sugars can be in the hundreds, 200s, 300s, 400. It'll just keep going. Then, because their pancreas in type 1 is literally dying, it doesn't produce insulin anymore. So type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune form of diabetes. It's when your body attacks itself. So think of arthritis of the pancreas. That's type 1 diabetes. So arthritis, your joints get attacked every time that you get stressed out. Well, with type 1 diabetes, every time you get stressed out, your pancreas gets attacked. So you literally kill the organ that makes insulin. So then you get a shot of insulin and it will pull it so it comes back in. Does that make sense? So that's insulin dependent type 1 diabetes. They used to call that child or juvenile diabetes. It doesn't work that way anymore because there's lots of interesting, well, if you eat foods that are high in inflammation, it can cause type 2, which used to be adult, in kids. The number one thing that you want to resist that causes chronic inflammation is seed oils. When I say that, what comes to mind? Any ideas?
Fast food.
Fast food is the answer, yes. So fast food is cooked in canola oil, rapeseed oil, corn oil, vegetable oil, any oil that shouldn't naturally exist. So if you squish an olive, oil comes out. You have to literally process the heck out of corn to get an oil out of it. It's not naturally occurring. So if you can take something that's already oily and take the oil out of it, you're okay. Like fish, take the fish oil out, you're okay. Avocados, you're okay. Olives, you're okay. Yes and no. It's if you want to be safe, don't eat it. The safe ones are, if you're vegetable based, is avocado, olive, and coconut. You can also do walnut oil. Those ones are because they're naturally high in omega-3s. So what? Yes, sir.
Isn't flaxseed high in essential fatty acids? Is it C15?
You're asking a question I don't know the answer to. If I can look it up and answer you, but I don't know it truthfully. It's high in fiber, so it'll help with other things. What we know about flax, it's also high in 6. And so those other oils that we're talking about, the problem is that they're high in omega-6. So if you see at the store omega-3, 6, 9, stay away. Omega-3 is only what you need. And when I say that is the only people that are going to need the 3, 6, 9 or the 3, 6 are your vegans who don't eat any fish or beef or meat. Because if you eat normal meats, you will get all the omega-6 you need. The problem is omega-6 is inflammatory. It turns into arachidonic acid, which literally causes inflammation throughout your body. So the ratio that you're supposed to have is twice as many omega-3s to omega-6s. And then you take those two combined and you make omega-9. So if you eat meat and you don't eat a lot of fish, you're going to need to supplement. The normal American that is not taking fish oil is omega-6 dominant and omega-3 deficient. So basically, you need the krill oil, the avocado, the olive, the fish oil to boost your omega-3s. So our Western diet, if we ever eat out, is huge amounts of omega-6. So when you do the testing, omega-6 usually comes between 600 to 10,000% higher than omega-3s, which means you have way more inflammation than you have the one that puts out the inflammation, omega-3. Whereas if you looked at native peoples before we industrialized, they're eating salmon. They're eating grass-fed buffalo. They're huge in omega-3s. Huge, huge, huge amounts. They have vitamin D and A levels off the charts, and that's because they're eating fat-soluble products. Our diet is literally driving the wrong oils. So that'll cause inflammation. Got off on that for a little bit. Now, this is another one that we want to be aware of that we actually see, and that is you eat your food, it comes up, it comes down, and then it goes way too down, then it comes back up. So that one is called reactive hypo low glycemia. So what that's actually causing is that you overproduce insulin and then you come back down. Yes.
You could probably have a regular A1C with that,
Correct.
but how would you know that you have that?
So the question is, you could have a normal A1C if you have that, but how would you learn? That's why I recommend those patches on your arms called continuous glucose monitors that are investment of between $50 to $100. Within a 2-week time frame, you will know if you have reactive hypoglycemia. You will know if you have a problem with blood sugars. So what does this show up with? This is the person that when they eat gets energy. If you eat and you get energy, that's a problem. You should eat and feel fine. If you eat and all of a sudden get energized, that tells me you're chronically low. If you eat and you get fatigued, that's another problem. That means that you're chronically high. Each of them cause 2 different physiological responses, but you just need to know if any one of you or your friends feels different after they eat, we have a blood sugar issue. Does that make sense? Yes.
If they overeat.
So the question is, what if they overindulge? Yes, that's called Thanksgiving. Overindulgence will cause people to have issues. And you'll see based on your physiology type. So say you're me, if I overindulge in the protein-based products, I'm going to get the tired. And if you are a thyroid or a lean body type, if you overindulge in the carbohydrates, you're going to get the same issue. So yes, this is true, but it's what does your lifestyle look like? Are we overindulging and eating heavy every night? Hopefully not, right? Or are we only doing it once in a while? Maybe Christmas, maybe New Year, something like, or Thanksgiving, then you're still okay. So we've been looking at these. Now what I want to talk about is what we see are patterns that we can see showing up. So we're going to talk about little Johnny. Little Johnny is a soccer player. He loves playing soccer. But ever since he started playing soccer, he started getting sick. Like, you know, have a little cold every once in a while, having issues, like his immune system was weak. But he also loved dairy. So he ate those cheese strings every day and yogurts, and he loved them, he loved them, he loved them. Now what happened with little Johnny is he played soccer, hung out with his friends, and he got, you know, a virus. So he was sick, staying at home. And mom didn't know any better. So when he asked for some milk and some cheese to give him some energy, he ate it. And the next day, he woke up, and all of a sudden, he had a pounding headache. What I'm explaining to you is what happened to my grandfather. This is how my grandfather got type 1 diabetes. So there is a genetic anomaly called GAD65. And this genetic anomaly, if you have it, when you eat dairy, the dairy will actually cross-react with that. So the antibodies that attack the dairy are the same antibodies that will attack this GAD. Here's the problem. The GAD is found in your pancreas. It's actually what makes the pancreas work correctly. So if you are somebody who has type 1 diabetes or autoimmune in your family, dairy is literally the devil. And I'm not lying because I'm literally telling you what you will see. This also cross-reacts with people who have OCD. So that GAD is also found in the brain and is correlated to, I believe, serotonin. But GABA. It's related to GABA in the brainstem. So what it will do is if you have an antibody for it, it will attack both the brainstem and the pancreas. So you're going to be hyper anxious and not be able to eat anything without insulin. So dairy is literally what will offset that and cause that problem. So what I'm letting you know is if you have issues with diabetes, try eliminating dairy in that family, and it may be a big changer for you. Even though it has a low glycemic index, it's the cross reactivity the dairy has that will actually cause the type 1 diabetes. So in Canada, it's well known that you do not give a child with a fever dairy or they can get diabetes. When I came down here, my physiology teacher told me I was crazy. Then when I got into Funk Med, I'm like, oh, that's everything I was taught. Yes.
Oh, doesn't matter what kind of dairy it's used.
No, the question is, does it matter what kind of dairy? No, it's actually the dairy itself. It's the proteins in the dairy will mimic the proteins of that GAD antibody, and it will literally cause that. So it's cross reactivity. So basically, if this is dairy and this is the GAD, they look almost exactly the same, and the body says that's foreign and kills it. So that's type 1 that I just explained to you. One that we're actually seeing quite prevalent is people who have the antibodies to type 1. So they have antibodies to their pancreas. They have the GAD antibodies or islet cell antibodies. So they're attacking themselves, but they're obese. So they're diagnosed as type 2. But they're not actually type 2. They're type 1.5. It means you have the antibodies, but you're not sick enough for your pancreas to stop making insulin. So 1.5 is actually becoming more common because a lot of people are actually producing these antibodies. They're attacking themselves. So if you have a friend or family member who has type 2, it's worthwhile to actually run islet cell antibodies, GAD65 antibodies, and see if they actually are a type 1 misdiagnosed as a type 2. That's really important because if you are a type 1, your management system is completely different than type 2. Type 1 is immune-based stability. So you got to actually stabilize the immune system so you don't attack your pancreas like you would attack your joints in arthritis. Whereas type 2 is a lifestyle-based system. But you also have to see if there's vicious loops going in there where people have digestive issues because their digestive tract is bad, or their adrenals are fatiguing, or they have head injuries. Yes, sir.
Is dairy naturally inflammatory?
The question is dairy naturally inflammatory? Let me ask this question. When you eat dairy, do you get phlegmy at all? The answer is yes. So the dairy that we eat also has issues in it. In America, the dairy is allowed to have, I'll tell you, it's allowed to have 10% pus and blood in it, and it's completely legal. So that's the percentage of the dairy that can have that in there. So if you've ever eaten dairy from anywhere in Europe or in Canada, it tastes different because in Canada and Europe, you're only allowed to calf the cow and milk it till it goes dry and then calf it again. Down here, you can actually pump hormones in it and milk it all year round after it's calved once. So that calving means giving birth to a calf and then it produces the milk. So the reason why it tastes different here is it has less fat in it because you're actually sucking all the nutrients out of the cow. So if you want better tasting dairy, get it from Europe. But if you are somebody who has diabetes or OCD in a family, dairy is probably not something you want to touch because you can literally induce that, specifically if you have a fever or a cold or something like that going on when your immune system's already heightened.
And raw dairy doesn't help?
Doesn't matter if it's raw, if it has special twinkle dust on it, or I'm not being mean. I'm just trying to let you know it's what's in it. So it doesn't matter if it's cow dairy, if it's pig dairy, if it's goat dairy, if it's, the worst one is actually camel dairy. It has the most reactivity. So a lot of people are going into camel milk. It's actually the most reactive form of dairy. So it's the casein protein in it that we react to. So you may have a lower reaction, but it's usually the dairy itself will cause the reaction. So if you don't have type 1 diabetes and you don't have it in your family, you're okay. But in general, if you don't want inflammation, try to limit dairy and gluten. Yeah. So the statement is if you eat dairy or gluten, you'll have more inflammation. Those are the big ones that cause cross-reactive and huge inflammation issues. So the other one we're going to talk about, type 2, it's usually lifestyle. So let's think of Janie. She's got her new job, 6 figures. Now she eats out every night, and she's noticing some weight coming on. And it's literally just lifestyle, sedentary, and what you're eating. But if you have any other predispositions like chronic stress, it's going to be harder for you to lose the weight because you could have adrenal fatigue. Or if you've had head injuries, harder to lose the weight because the pituitary won't work correctly. Or if your microbiome is dying because you're eating a lot of salt, or if you're eating a lot of inflammatory oils, that can kill it as well. So it's going to make it harder to lose weight. So you need to understand the microbiome, the bacteria, it actually determines how quickly you feel full. In conjunction to the fat cells, as well as the microbiome is going to determine how you metabolize the food. So if you have a healthy gut, you actually stay lean, get full quicker, and your body heals itself quicker. Now, the one that most people may or may not be aware of is type 3 diabetes. Has anybody heard of this? That's called Alzheimer's. So type 3 diabetes is improper blood sugar utilization in the brain. This comes on by having chronic inflammation. So if you've had head injuries, it can cause this. If you have chronic inflammation, so you're eating dairy, you're eating pizza every night and having a couple beers. The beer is going to have gluten in it, which is inflammatory. The alcohol is inflammatory. The gluten is in the pizza, and the pizza is inflammatory. The dairy is inflammatory. If you also have what's it called? Lectin issues or nightshade issues, all of these things can be inflammatory. So if you chronically have that, you're like, well, I don't really notice anything. Well, see if you find that when you wake up after you eat that, are your joints a little stiffer than they should be? Does your body feel puffier than it should be? These are all indications of inflammation. Do you have brain fog? Not because you drank 8 beers, but you had 1 beer, do you get brain fog after it? This is telling me chronic inflammation. If your blood sugars aren't responding correctly, it'll cause chronic inflammation as well. And then that will literally cause neurodegeneration. It'll cause a buildup of plaquing in the brain. And that's how you get that type 3 diabetes, is you're not utilizing the sugar correctly. And then instead of the red blood cells getting glazed, the brain is getting glazed. And that's how we can get that Alzheimer's, dementia type stuff. So we really want, the big one that we want to take care of is number 1, oxygen, but number 2, sugar. If we can take our sugars and keep them in the right range, we live longer. If we can't, we get sick quicker. What sickness do you turn on? The one that you're predisposed to. You're predisposed to anxiety, you get that inflammation, you turn that on. You're predisposed to low back pain, you turn that on. It's whatever you're predisposed to based on what your family has learned to do. So what we want to see is that stress will push it up. And I didn't get into this, but every time you stress, emotionally, physically, or chemically, you produce cortisol. Do you guys remember what cortisol's original name was? No? Glucocorticoid. That's because cortisol's job is to give you more energy to run away or fight. So that means every time you release cortisol, you boost blood sugar. That means every time you get a cortisol injection, your blood sugar goes up. That means every time that you are trying to make the inflammation go down in your knee and you get an injection, now your blood sugar goes up. Is it making sense? So we've literally seen where people, I'll get to you, where people have been trying to treat a joint for pain, and they have cortisol or prednisone or whatever injections, and now they get diabetes after because they were giving them so much. Yes, sir.
Cortisol, as long as it's not chronic, is actually
Yeah, you naturally produce it, yes, and use it. it is helpful, but the levels of injection and the localization are bad. It is in small amounts. Chronic stress and chronic cortisol cause degenerative issues. You don't need high cortisol all the time, because then you deplete it, and then you're that person that gets hypoglycemia at 4 a.m., at 2 a.m., because now your cortisol doesn't bring your sugar up. Cortisol's natural job is to bring the sugar up when you're sleeping. So if you're cortisol depleted because you're chronically stressing out, now your cortisol dumps between 2 and 4. Your blood sugar is the time it needs to push up. So your body's smart and it goes, you're going to die. We don't have enough cortisol. How are we going to boost it up? Let's push out some adrenaline. And that's why you wake right up and your heart's beating out of your chest. What the heck just happened? Well, it's you've burned out your cortisol throughout the day, and you've done this chronically, and that's how you're getting that glucose dump in the middle of the night. Does it make sense? So I hope you guys had a takeaway. You can see the multiple things. It gets more complex based on what form you have, but there are ways to help it. If you're chronically high, the sugar products that we recommend is glycine to help absorb the sugar, and glycoberine to help another pathway called the AMPK pathway that helps you burn fat to make it into to make you metabolize that as well as metabolize sugar correctly. If you're chronically low, there's a thing called proglycan SP, and we use that to pull you up. Depending on your physiology type, determines what you are. If you are a substantial physiology type, which means you look at cake and gain weight, that's me, then what you want to do is you're going to be more prone to, they're the people with the big shoulders or the big butts. You're the one that are prone to having high blood sugar. If you have high blood sugar, high heart rate, high everything, you're the high person. So glycine, glycoberine is good for you. If you're the lean person who's chronically low, you're noticing you're getting brain fog, you can eat anything and not gain weight, then you're going to be the one that's low, and we got to push you up. Your question, sir.
Yeah, would you recommend people do muscle testing on products before they buy them?
So the question is, would you recommend muscle testing? Yes and no. If it's somebody who's trained and knows how to do it, yes. If you aren't, it's not going to be that accurate. So you got to make sure you know who's actually doing it. What I would recommend for everybody, though, is to easily invest that $50 if you have an iPhone, $100 if you have an Android, get the continuous glucose monitor, and then know what you're actually doing. Because there may be some foods that you think are good for you that are actually spiking or dumping your blood sugars, and then you'll understand what's happening. The key of the glucose monitor is to see what your food does to you. It's not to get in the range that the diabetic person's in. Because I've had patients that go, no, you get it, and this is the range I need to. Well, no, they told me I was doing really good because I was below 140. And I'm like, that's for people with diabetes. You don't have diabetes. You're actually too low. You got hypoglycemia. Or you're reactive and you're too high, because we're looking at uncontrolled blood sugar. That's what diabetes is. I didn't get into this, but if you have chronically high fat because of inflammation, triglycerides, or cholesterol, it will actually bind to the insulin receptor site, and that can cause type 2 diabetes. That's the major cause of it. So what I want to bring up for you guys is next week is our Patient Appreciation Week. So we have times available. The days are the 23rd, 24th, 25th, and if you want food and drink, the 26th is the actual day. If you have a friend or family member who has something going on, this is the no-brainer. This is the $20 get checked out time. Think of one person right now. Tell us, we'll put them on the board, and then get that time. This is the week where you can give back to your friends, and it's a no-brainer. Take a chance. Think of that one person and see if we can find out what's actually going on with them, so they don't walk around just thinking it's a genetic problem, when if you didn't have it before 5, it's not a genetic problem, it's a lifestyle problem. Do we have any questions?
All 4 days.
It's all 4 days next week, correct?
When you do the CGM, you have to journal what you write.
Correct. When you do the continuous glucose monitor, you need to say, I ate a steak. And then you can see what happened after you ate the steak. Or I ate vegetables and you can see what didn't happen. Or I ate fruit and then went all the hell acres. Or I ate fruit and then a steak and everything was fine. Because then you actually figure out, the goal is for you to use it as a tool to figure out what you're actually doing to your sugars.
So in the moment, the time investment is to journal, and later you go look at the feed, the
So yeah,
track for you automatically.
yes. Automy, what you do is you get it, first 2 days, you eat however you want to eat. You journal what you do normally, and then you'll see what it does to you. At the end of the day, oh crap, I ate that. That's what it did. Okay. Then you go and you either talk to me or you think about it and go, why don't I try eating a little differently? Why don't I try eating like what Dr. Josh said and maybe do vegetables before I eat steak? Or no steak in the morning and just do it in the afternoon. Or if I need my sugars to stay high through the night, I eat some protein or fat, and you start doing those things. So you're reflecting on it daily to see what happens. And the goal is to have less volatile movements.
So is like intermittent fasting 16, 18 hours a night
Mhm.
and the next day, is that good for everybody?
So the question is intermittent fasting. Are we running out of time, Riley? Okay. So if we get cut off, I'm sorry, everybody. Intermittent fasting is really good for substantial body types. This is your adrenals. That's like me. That's a person who looks like a block. Your gonadals, those are the people, they're going to have more junk in the trunk. If you are a thyroid body type, which is the lean, thin people, they love running, they love cardio. Intermittent fasting is possible if you're healthy. If you are going towards like hypoglycemia, it is not something I would recommend for you. Because with the fasting, you're really going to put a lot of stress on your adrenal glands and your pancreas to produce glucagon, as well as to produce a lot of cortisol to pull your sugars up. So if you're not in a healthy place when you do it, it can cause a lot of major fatigue issues. What I would recommend for anybody who wants to do it is go into it slowly. Take a month at doing 12 hours. Then add another couple weeks to add to 14 or a month and work into it slowly. You can get to that one day at 24 hours in 6 to 9 months, but don't go, I'm going to do one meal a day. I usually eat 3 meals a day. You're going to drive yourself nuts because you literally have to turn on the Krebs cycle and turn down using blood sugars. The Krebs cycle is how you turn fat into energy. If that's not working to make the Krebs go backwards and help you make ketones, you're literally going to have low blood sugars. You're going to be the meanest person ever to be around because you're going to be all hangry all over the place. And it'll cause more energy issues. If you're thinking about doing it, the best thing to do would be do a continuous glucose monitor and see what's actually happening. Are you chronically running below 85? Then maybe fasting isn't the best way for you to do it yet until you figure out what you need. Most thyroid people, intermittent fasting is really hard on them.
And the point is to get into ketosis.
The point is to get into ketosis, but the point of fasting is also more than that. So you get into ketosis, so you're burning fat. That's the beginning. But then you get into gut repair once you get into days 2 and 3. You also get into autophagy when you actually eat up the bad cells. You also will make your mitochondria more competent, so the energy cells, so they use less energy and make less free radicals, which is what makes you inflammation. So they become more